Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back for another edition of Digi Sis in the Digi World. I am Ina P. Montgomery, founder and executive director of Urban Tech, or the TEC is the acronym for Technology Empowered Communities. You guys know I be trying to, just get our babies some love and spread some technology. So we've heard that a couple of schools will be opening, so that is good. Because I actually miss the kiddos. And so, they do what they do, but they're kids, but I miss them. I got all this stuff and I need to get rid of it. So I am excited. I know my contract with Link, they're ready. One of their school districts will be starting actually in this month, February. They've already reached out to me. So we're ready to rock and roll. So I'm excited about that. And so I told you guys I would be more intentional this year with my programming, bringing on guests. Last week we had Christine Chandler, who's currently in the Center School District, but who will be transitioning, as she announced, in July to KC STEM Alliance as their digital equity inclusion manager. But she's a rock star. She's been doing FIRST Robotics. And she'll be doing some additional outreach to the, I guess we'll do the urban community thing, but we know Black kids, Black and brown kids, I guess. So we are excited about that. And we are also excited about today. As you see, we have another guest. We have Andrea Ellis from the Kansas City Public Library Digital Media Lab. And we are excited to have her here. And so, Andrea, I'm gonna let you go ahead and introduce yourself. Just tell us your name, your title, and what you guys do there at the Digital Media Lab.
Absolutely. So again, it's Andrea Ellis. It's a pleasure to be on here. Thank you for inviting me, Ina. And the Digital Media Lab for the Kansas City Public Library is located at our Southeast branch on 63rd and Swell Parkway. And basically it is a maker creation space for young people between the ages of 11 to 18. So of course, before COVID, it was pretty packed and we had a lot of activity. And now we're in a space where, we all are being conscious of what's happening here, but we're still trying to find a way to serve our babies when they need to be served. So in this space, I'll just add, because when we say maker and creation, you can see behind me, we have, the soundboard. So we have an audio suite. We have 3D printers where they can come in and do 3D design and creation. We have a radio control car club that we work with. It's really like whatever they can think of. If we got it here, we can help them use it. And if we don't have it, we can figure out maybe how to help them get to that next level that they're trying to get to.
Yeah, I love it too. And so talk about how you transitioned, because the Digital Media Lab, from what I understand, initially started downtown at the Central Library, and they actually built out that space at the Southeast branch for you and Marcus, your partner in great crime,
right?
To work at it. So can you just tell us about what was the rationale behind making that move?
Absolutely. So when we first, so I came on the library in 2012 and did this initial work and research in the community to figure out what was needed and so forth. And then I was able to bring Marcus on in 2014, and we specifically were traveling around to the branches and other community organizations and doing programming, right? So we would do some at Central, but we were really out in the community. And so after doing that for a couple of years, what we realized was that we had a breadth of opportunity to meet with students. Like, we offered a lot of things and we could be a lot of places, but we couldn't go as deep as we wanted to go, right? And for many of the kids that we were serving, when they wanted to know how to come back to us, there wasn't really a place for them to do so unless we just happened to be at a program in their neighborhood. And so and some of the programming we had done at the Southeast branch, there was a large number of teenagers that were spending time here in this branch in general. And Marcus had come and was building relationships here. And we both are from Kansas City. And this is a part of the city that we both know well and grew up in, family and all of that. So we made a case for, we have young people here. There's a school across the street. There's another 5 schools within a mile radius or so. It's easy to get to from 63rd Street, right? And for people who are coming from other places, you have 71 Highway close by. So we really made a case for why it needed to be in this community. And because we wanted to be able to, serve these kids that were coming and that would not necessarily have access to this type of technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now it's in their community and they can have access to it. So we made that pitch, and the library saw the vision of it and supported and advocated for us, and ultimately renovated the whole branch around kind of building this space for teenagers.
Right. That's great. I mean, now as you were speaking, is there a space similar to what you guys offer in that area? Or like what's the radius if you had to do like a 3-5 mile radius similar to what you have there?
Right. So I would say for youth, right? Because there's the Hammer space is not too far away. For adults who are ready to do some maker and creation, and there's a fee for that. It's not totally out of pocket for some folks, but that's for adults and definitely next level creation. I know that the Boys and Girls Club, they have a similar kind of setup. They have an audio production suite, but I think so far they aren't quite. We're actually looking at maybe a possibility of partnering or helping them level up with that with the staff that we have here. So we're still in conversations about that. But other than that, I don't know of any other program that exists the way that we are here in the community. And what I find most important is even if there's somebody who has some of this stuff, it's not free, right? It's not open to any young person. And we're very protective of it being a space for young people. Because as you can imagine, every time I turn around, there's an adult who's like, oh, what about me? And I'm like, right, and I get it. I love you, but this is one of the few spaces that is for teens to be safe, to create and have a good time and not have to worry about, adults kind of taking over the space.
Right. So 2 questions. When you refer to Boys and Girls Clubs, are you referring to the one on 43rd in Cleveland or?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so that's a distance away. If I lived in that community or if I attended Southeast High School, you're definitely more accessible than.
Absolutely.
Right. So
absolutely. But thinking in terms of community, we could get on a bus and we could support each other, right? Because we're all trying to figure out how to support each other. But yeah, if you're talking about, just being able to walk from your house or after school, which is what we have a lot of kids just coming over after school, yeah, this is going to be the closest place you can come.
And so just curious, so you would entertain the idea of like something for adults, like a little workshop, because they want to have fun too. And I know when I do things with the kids, the parents are like, gosh, that looks like so much fun. You do anything, for my age? Because I've never made elephant toothpaste. I've never, done the stuff that you're doing. I've never done rainbow in the cloud. And so I'm like, oh, have you ever considered that or?
Oh, absolutely. And how I connect it, because to me, it still has to be connected to youth. So it's for, we've thought about programming for trusted adults that work with young people in some capacity. So formal educators, informal educators, parents, right? And so that's kind of how it feels comfortable to me because it's still connected to young people, but it's a way to help them think about, because they need to be encouraged to think as creatively and outside of the box as our young people do, right? And so, and it's hard for a parent to be able to really see a vision and value for it if they also don't have, the ability to kind of touch it and see it and know what it means, right? So we see the value of it. Marcus and I talk about that all the time, but the way that I can keep it safe and protected for youth is to make that connection.
Right. And then do you do family nights? Because I know I've been in your space. You have a lot of board games. Is that just primarily for the kids or do you have like family nights and, have fun?
Youth, right? Because when they're here, so pre-COVID and, when we return back to being fully open, is that we had it designed in such a way that there was what we called kind of a social side, right? So this is when they first get in from after school, we would have Kids Cafe where we would have food for them. They could play games. And, periodically, like once a week, we would have video games. So it was just kind of a hangout spot. And then the other side was more of our focus spot. So for those young people that came in and knew that they wanted to either do the audio production suite or they wanted to do something related to design or something, there was a little bit of a different side they could go to. So we have had some opportunities where we've invited other people to come in and, kind of play and get to know the space. But, like I said before, they are connected to young people in some way, shape, or form.
Right. So I know you say your space is kind of like open, it's very fluid. So do the kids see something and say, hey, I want to do this? Or do you guys like maybe have like a weekly challenge or an introduction of a new technology? I mean, how does that work to come in and say, I want to make something?
Yeah, so it's a couple different ways, right? So it is some of those things you talked about where there's like, oh, we're going to talk about 3D design. If you want to just learn the basics of Tinkercad, how to get an account and how to do some of the basics, right? Or we might do Beats 101, right? So we will have those kind of workshops to do some introduction. But I tell you, the magic is really in the trusted adults that work here. So like Marcus Brown and Kyrese Devine. Kyrese is our audio production engineer. And then Kaisha Collins is our youth services librarian. It's really the relationships that they build with those young people over time, which you know about, right? It's like those young people get used to seeing them. They come in a number of times and just want to hang out. And then eventually Mr. Brown will be like, hey, I can tell you're really interested in drawing. Do you want to try this Wacom tablet and see how that works for you, right? And so there's a way to kind of pull them in and get them to try something that they might not have considered before because of those relationships.
Mm-hmm. That's good, because that helps develop. It sounds like what you're saying is that they are able to identify this talent or this interest that the kid probably doesn't know that they have. And then they can see, you actually got some skills in that, you want to take that to the next level or do something like that. And to me, that's the value of after school programming. Having those opportunities to help the kids grow and to identify, things that are within them that they might even see for themselves.
Absolutely, right? And the other thing that, for us, the philosophy is that all of this technology and all of these great, cool gadgets or whatever, they're just tools in our mind, right? Like, really what this is about is how to help you level up to whatever next level you want to get to, and how we can give you the support for that, right? So sometimes we have young people who come in here and they're having some issues with math. And Mr. Brown, who used to be a math teacher, will, make time for that. And if they're serious, okay, let's sit down and I'll work through this with you, right? And okay, and then you are off and on your way. You don't have to do anything related to technology if you don't want to, right? It's really just, where are you trying to get to? Can we support you in doing that based on what our skill set is and what our resources are? And if so, that's what we're here for.
Right. That's great. So I know, like, since you guys been in Central Downtown, do you have any like alumni who come back and volunteer? How's your relationship or contact with those who have, graduated high school already?
Yeah, we have quite a few. We haven't had any that have come back to volunteer. They come back and they let us know how they're doing and where they're at, whether they've gotten a job or gone to college or whatever the case may be. We've had some success with building volunteers from those who were here and maybe were starting to age out a little bit, but didn't know where their next steps were going to be, right? Because that 18 to 24 is still so fragile, right? Yeah. And we've created a world that's making it hard for them to find income. So we've been able to do that with a couple young people, and then they've helped us, and then we kind of, okay, so where do you want to go next? But we opened in 2018, but really only a year before we hit COVID, right? A year and a half. But I was also being very protective again in terms of the volunteer. I wanted to make sure that we had paid staff that was dedicated to be here, that was building those relationships. And then kind of as we grow, we'll be moving more into now, where does it make sense to bring volunteers into this space, right? But we want these young people to know that these folks you can trust, those of us that are here on a regular basis, and whoever we bring in, we're bringing in people you can trust. So.
Right. Okay. Now I know I have had the fortunate opportunity to work with you on a grant. I just know the acronym KACI, but I can't remember what it stands for. But can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know we were talking before the show, and you mentioned it,
Yeah.
it was a way to connect like the social, the community. Can you just talk about the mission of that grant and why that was so important that you did that work?
Yeah, I'll try to do that. Okay. So CACI stood for Community Access Card Initiative because
Mhm.
initially the goal was that we were going to try to figure out how to use the library card to help connect young people to whatever in the city. And through a process of really talking to a lot of young people, we interviewed quite a few youth directly, and then we talked to educators and trust those trusted adults. We learned that, you know what, this is we have a bigger problem we need to solve, right? And so what we found out through those conversations is that there is this series of what we term learning equity gaps. And these are gaps that adults need to fill, not gaps that young people have in themselves, right? And so it started with awareness and like, are they aware that programs exist? And then it was say a young person is aware, do they have a way to access it? So transportation became a huge part of that process, right? Because young people were like, I don't, you know, I can't get to where I need to be. You know, my parent has to work. They're not comfortable with me on the bus, whatever those things are, right? So transportation became a huge conversation. After access, it was engagement. So say they can access your program, they can get there. Once they get there, did you create a program they even wanted to participate in? Did we consider their voice in the process? And then, so say yes, you did that. The next step was a pathway. So they liked your program. Do we know how to get them to another program that will feed that so that they continue to grow? And then the last one was opportunity. So say all of that other stuff happens, do they know how to translate this into real professional or personal opportunity? So after we did all of that research, we came down to a recommendation of we needed to create in Kansas City, we felt like something that would, a Kansas City Learning Exchange, what we called it, that would bring together those trusted adults in youth's life that were really putting youth first. So what does that look like? An ecosystem of that. And then also a piece of technology that would be able to connect all of those out of school time programs that exist in the city and it would be for young people so that they know where it is, they know how to get there, and we wanted to build in mobility options. Okay, so that was the big picture solution. We prototyped some things, and then we need more money, right, to build the technology and to build the organization. So where we're at now, we went after a National Science Foundation grant in partnership with the University of Kansas, City Phi, and KC Digital Drive, those names. So all of us went in together to go after a National Science Foundation grant, and we did receive that award, that first step award. So it's a 2-stage process. And what we're saying to them is we want to now really bring in these mobility providers, and we want to figure out how to create that design of that technology to see if we can really create a system that will benefit young people and help them get to these locations. But the first stage of that is that we need to talk to some more young people, and we need to talk to some more parents to say, what would you guys really do? Would you get into a Lyft or Uber if background checks were done and all of that? What would you be willing to do? So that's the stage we're in now. And then we will go, after the end of this, we apply for a bigger stage. That's a $1 million, up to $1 million grant that we can ask for. So that's what we're moving towards. Wow. I know that was a lot. So,
that was good. Yeah. And so, yeah, because I enjoyed my little small participation with the students over at Southeast High School. We had a good time. I was able to introduce them, and they're so hungry, and that's the thing. I know you see it, but our kids are so hungry and they're so creative, and they have so many ideas. And you and I know all we have to do is just show them this, and then they'll take it to a whole new level, do something that we never even thought about. Absolutely. And so, the whole creation, ideation, innovation, all that stuff. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna amen that and then add an and. So I feel like we see kind of two types of young people, right? You have those who do have that, like you give them a little bit and they can just blow it up and you're like, I'd never even thought about that. And then you have that other group that have been so kind of trained to only do things the way that it has been shown to them to be done. And so when you're like, hey, you can do this however you want to, and let's think outside the box. It's a fear and it's an inability to trust their own gut and instinct, right? And so that is a part of what the safe space is about. It's like, yeah, well, you know what? You can mess up here. Like failure is okay, because for us, failure is just a step towards success, right? It's just one step towards it. So it's interesting to see those two different sides of what our kids are experiencing, through the learning process.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure on that latter student you described, once they change, I guess, their mindset, and or I'm sure it's probably impacting them academically, where they're maybe more inquisitive in the classroom, or maybe seeing things through a different lens other than, being so rote, like, here's what it is, this is what you do, and then that's it. You've got to have that creativity and critical thinking, to be successful. So I think that's great.
And it's so hard to measure, right? Like, when you go after funding, everybody wants to know, how did you change somebody's life totally, and it's like, well, the thing is, there's all these little wins, and some of them we won't even see for decades, right? It's like, but all of a sudden now they spoke up in class, like you said, before they didn't. And so it's really an interesting place for those of us who do this work to be, because we have to go out and we have to ask for somebody to give money and to see the vision. But we also have to trust that we know it is working, right? Because we are seeing the change in the demeanor even of those young people when they go through, the process that I do, that you do, that other folks in our community do,
Yeah.
It's interesting.
So with the community and education and the pandemic, how do you feel about the digital literacy divide, and is it widening? Do you have major concerns? Are we going to be okay? Because I know I'm not comfortable on my end. It was already, there was already a huge gap. And just knowing that, not that I'm saving the world, but just knowing that I'm not, accessing my kids and they're not having those after school experiences, because like you said, you see it when they're like, wow, that's cool,
Yeah.
And I know when I went back to one school, and after I'd done my STEAM labs, they had like a parent night or something, and they had, vendors come back and set up. And I got there kind of late, and so I had to set all my little makeys up. There was one student who had taken my class, and he was like, "Do you need help, Miss M?" Because they can't say Montgomery, so they just call me Miss M. And I was like, "You." He was like, "Yeah, I remember how to hook it up." He hooked up. He remembered. And so he was able to, turn that laptop on, get that makey hooked up, absolute no problem. Then he was like, are you gonna do Play-Doh? Are you gonna do fruit? I was like, I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I'm even thinking about him now, because I would like to do a boys camp, because you and I know, where can young Black boys go ages, 9 to 11, 9 to 13, whatever, to explore, to have access to these things. So anyway, back to the question, the widening, do you feel or not, or are you concerned, or, what can we do in these times of COVID and digital literacy concerns?
Yeah. Honestly, the biggest concern for me, which is often is what adults do to impact our young people, right? Like, they're resilient, and I know they've missed a lot. They have. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that.
Right.
But they can come back from it if we were thinking strategically and intentionally about how to do it. And I know a lot of people will probably be like, of course we are, but it's like, and are you doing it with them in mind, first and foremost? Are we doing it because we have to, we got to get our economy started again, or we got to get these tests taken, or, like, it just frustrates me that the testing system didn't just get put on hold for a couple years. Like, really, that's our priority. And when we come back, we're going to come back and do things the way we've always done it. Like, really? No,
Right.
this is the time to have totally revamp, right? And so, because they're still not wanting to come to school. Like somebody said to me, the best measure of somebody is doing the job in terms is if they come back, right? If they want to be where you are. And so the question to me is, what are we doing collectively? And I know there's some amazing teachers out there. So please, I'm not saying everybody, but we also know that there are a whole lot of people getting lost, a whole lot of young people getting lost in the cracks because it's not engaging. We're not meeting them where they're at, and we're not giving them an opportunity to learn in a totally different way. Like if you have to build something, you're learning math, you're learning science, you're learning how to work with a team, right? How do we think outside the box? And I think this is a time where we have to do that. So when you talk about like, is there a gap or are they losing anything? Yeah, but they could get it back. These kids could get it back with the right, intentional work from the adults in this community. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, and you're probably you're probably right. I was just thinking about and not a lot, but just some teachers who are still resistant to technology, so their kids may not be getting that classroom experience. But I definitely think you're right about this could have been a great time for let's assess the way we're delivering education. We already know one size did not fit all. Can we use more technology? Can we set up visits, now, let's talk to Andrea over there, the digital media lab, and, how can we get our kids through here? Let's talk about curriculum and what you're doing. Let's make that tie. Urban tech, let's do the same thing, with where you're at. And I think those are, the kids are zoomed out, they're teamed out. And so, bringing them back into the classroom, some people are having concerns, how's that going to look? Yeah, they're going to come back in, but what's going to be different? Right. Some just weren't even engaged before they left. And, so I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah. And could we allow ourselves to just admit that, like, we're in a crazy time, everything is upended, instead of like, let's try to go back to the way it was. It's like, no, we throw everything out and start from what would be the best possible experience for these young people. Mm-hmm. What would be the best possible experience, right? And some of it would be adults saying, I don't know what the heck to do. I really don't. But this is what we're gonna play. We're gonna, you know what I mean? Like, right. But it's okay for us to say we don't have all the answers because we didn't. This is new for all of us. This pandemic, this experience, and we're all learning and growing and failing and succeeding in the midst of it. So.
Right. But the point you made earlier, if they go and they build, that's engineering, that's math, so they do that, they have those hands-on experiences, and then it can transfer or translate into academics. All you have to do is point it out to them. Oh, remember when you hit that hammer, the other day, here's what you were doing. Oh, and look what we're learning in class. This correlates to that. And the kids, oh, really? We have to, or a good educator has to make that connection.
Yeah. And that, because we've seen that a lot, right? Like they will build, like we had some kids build a foosball table. I'm saying foosball table with Mr. Brown at one of our after hour events. And but then when you might ask them a day later, what'd you guys do? I don't know. I don't know. But it's like, no. Let me tell you what you did, right? But in the midst of it, Mr. Brown did a lot of that talking, so that they could start to cement that in their brains, because they don't sometimes think that that's a skill, because they have in their head what an intelligent, successful person looks like, and it's not necessarily what they are doing or who they are, right? And so in their head anyway, and so that's a lot of the work too, is to connect the dots.
The bike that Mr. Brown built, I don't know what it does, but I know you guys have a
motorized bike.
What is it called?
The motorized bike.
Yeah, the motorized bike.
Yeah, we had a young man who, he's a tinkerer. He's one of those that his mom's probably like, he's going to burn our house down at some point. But he's a tinkerer, a builder, whatever. And so when she connected to this space, she was like, oh, great, I can bring him to Mr. Brown and they can dive deep together. So yeah, they were working on, adding a motor to this bicycle. And they worked on that for a while, but that was the process, and they had a lot of things that didn't work in the process of it, right? And so he had to learn, okay, maybe I need to get a different ignition here, or maybe I need to do this, and this is why it didn't work. That's all the learning process. That is all of it.
And was he patient through the whole process? He was.
You see, from my perspective, when I came in, he seemed patient, but I know his mom was like, feeling like there's a whole lot going on in his head, right? And he's trying to do it at home. And so there was frustration, but there was also, but I'll be back, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, let's be honest, we all have that. Yeah, I get frustrated at something, I'm learning something new, but sometimes I put it down, I go away, and I come back and I have to do it again, right? That's part of the process. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to put it down for a minute, right? Like, we got to kind of pull back that veil and stop acting like we're perfect, right? Like, there's only one way to do it. And if you don't do it that way, you're not successful.
And especially when you're talking about kids who are in school, who are learning. I mean, where else do they have, like you said, the safe space to explore, to ask, to be inquisitive, to find things out, to really be presented with information so they can draw their own conclusions. They should not be spoon-fed on, here's how it is, here's the only way. Let them decide that.
Right.
And, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure you share that same philosophy, because when I'm working with kids, they'll ask me a question. I'll be like, I don't know. What do you think? Try it out. I'm here if you have any questions, and they, are you sure, Miss M? Yeah, go for it, and some of them are not used to that. And it's kind of sad when they're so used to, really, I can think on my own, I can, do this. And then once they get that permission to do it, they're gone, and I'm like, look at you, that's great what you did.
Yeah. And then with that added piece, when they teach you something and you are willing to say, oh my gosh, I did not know that. I didn't. Thank you. Okay, now I've learned something new that happens for them. Like, oh, I taught you something. Okay, exactly. That's magic. So that means now that gives them a sense of, I know something, right? I don't know. It's just such a big deal, man. We need to remind them that actually outside of school, they know a whole lot. See, and that's another thing we dismiss in talking about these gaps. Is, okay, maybe they don't know this particular math problem, but they out here, doing what they have to do to survive, to take care of family members, to do, all of that kind of stuff. And those skill sets should not be diminished.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Ellis, and your words of wisdom and for your time. Any closing remarks? Are you guys ready for post-COVID?
Oh my gosh, we're revving up. Not quite ready yet, but I just appreciate you having us on here. And take a look at our website, kcdml.org, and we'd love to see you guys, see your young people out here as we open back up. Maybe in the summer, maybe, I don't know. I can't make any promises, but.
All right, well, thank you. So we thank you again for coming and sharing. And so next week, I've got Andrea Cook with Kansas City Public Schools, and she works with the digital learning area of the district. And I believe like teacher professional development. And so she's going to come on and talk about what they've been doing to help fill some of these gaps that some of the teachers might have in using technology and integrating different tools to engage the students, as me and Ms. Ellis here are talking about. And so that is it, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I am Ina Montgomery, a Digi Sis in a Digi World, tuning out, and I will see you next Thursday here at 5 o'clock.